I'm Here we go. So make sure you accept to join us. And we've got people rolling in. Yay. People chatting. Yay. Okay. Welcome, everybody. It's been a while since I've been your host of one of our webinars because I was off gallivanting the world until the world started shutting down again and working on my book and doing fun things. And thank you to my team for handling the last couple of webinars. I'm really glad to be back. This is one of my favorite things that I do, and I missed everybody. I'm Alexa Bigwarf, host of the Women in Publishing Summit, CEO and founder of Write, Publish, Sell. We're so excited to have you all from both of those audiences. And today we're going to be talking about one of the most fun things to talk about, but sometimes one of the most difficult things to figure out how to do properly in the most impactful manner, which is how do you show up in front of media and other audiences in a meaningful way that's actually going to help you sell your book? And Mary is the master at this. I'm going to read the official bio, and I'm sure she will share. If you saw her in the Women in Publishing Summit, you know some really cool things about her, and I'm sure she will share more about herself. But officially, Mary O'Donoghue is a media coach for authors, a #1 best-selling parenting author, and a former post-producer for the Oprah Winfrey Show. You get a Mary, and you get a Mary, and you get a Mary today, right? She's worked with high-profile media for decades, including years on the Today Show and NBC Nightly News. As the founder of Authors in Media, Mary teaches women nonfiction authors how to get publicity without a publicist and turn media interviews into valuable marketing assets. So you can join her community at maryodonoghue.com and get your 3 podcast one sheets to stand out as a media savvy to podcasters. And her email address is mary@maryodonoghue.com. And if you didn't grab any of that stuff, do not worry. We will be sending out all of her contact information in our follow-up email. So welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for all that you do for our Women in Publishing Summit community. And I'm going to hand the reins over to you because they're here for you, not me.
Hey, sure. Absolutely. Thank you. I see everybody coming in. I saw somebody from Chicago, which is where I'm from, and then somebody else in Sagi, Tennessee, which is where I am.
Nice.
So that's where I live now. So welcome. I'm so happy to be here. And I'm not going to do this with notes. I'm not going to do this with slides because media is my world. I tell people that I feel like I've spent most of my life living on planet media, and that I'm like a media anthropologist because in my 30 plus years working in television, I have worked on more than 10,000 media interviews. Actually, it's probably closer to 20,000, but give or take. So that's why I do consider myself a media anthropologist, as I said, because I really understand what goes into making an effective media interview. That's one of the things I'm going to talk about today. As a media coach, originally a couple of years ago, I guess 2016, I started as a media coach. I was coaching entrepreneurs, experts, authors, people who had brick and mortar stores, etc. And then as the years went by, I realized that every time I had an offering, it was authors who took that offering. It was authors who finished the courses I gave, and then it was nonfiction authors. And then little by little, it really became mostly women. And I recently taught a course to a group of women, and it was just this amazing community. And so that's kind of where I am right now. I work specifically with women nonfiction authors. So that's who I'm talking to, and that's who is in this audience, so it's perfect. So the first thing I want to share with you is when you think about pitching media, when you think about being in a media interview, I want you to think about putting yourself in the place of a journalist or a reporter, a producer, etc. And I studied journalism in college. And ask yourself, what are the things that a media person is going to be looking for when I pitch them, when I'm sitting there being interviewed by them? And you'll probably think of the 5 W's. Does anybody know what the 5 W's are? Can you put them in the comments? Oh, my volume. You know what? I'm sitting further back. I'm going to sit closer to my mic, and hopefully that will help. And I'll talk louder. Okay, who, what? Yes. Who, what, where, when, why? Excellent. Excellent. That's exactly right. So, in our brains as journalists, we are literally trained to answer the questions who, what, when, where, why. And then there's another one, a sixth question that also comes into play, which is how. That's sort of the yes, exactly. Y'all are smart. So how is the other one. So if you want to take a little note here, it's remember when you are interacting in any way with someone in media that our brains are really trained to say, who am I talking to? What is her message? Where does she fit in? Could she be interviewed on this show or that show? When would be a good time to book her? Why is she the expert that I want to talk to about this topic? And the how is going to come into play as we move forward. And by the way, I know we're going to have questions at the end, but if anything that I'm saying isn't clear, go ahead and put a message there, and I will pay attention to that and either make sure to answer as I'm going along or to answer at the end if that's okay. So over the years now, as a media coach, I have taught a lot of authors about how to pitch media, how to do effective media interviews, and how to build relationships, long-term relationships with media. And one of the reasons I've done this is because, and Alexa's heard me say this before, a media interview is a marketing asset that somebody else pays to create. I'm going to say it again because it's such a cool thing. When I realized this, I was like, oh my God, media interviews are so valuable. So media interview is a marketing asset for your book, your brand, your business that somebody else pays to create. But it's only an asset if you're prepared, right? If you just randomly show up and do a media interview and you're not prepared, it could be a marketing liability that somebody else controls. Because the reason you don't have to pay for it is the media outlet owns it. And by the way, as I said, you don't have to pay for it, but it's better than free, right? Because that media outlet is actually paying money. If it's television, for cameras, for audio, for lights, for the studio rental, or they own it, for all of the crew, all of the producers, all of the infrastructure. Same thing for magazines, newspapers, all of the distribution, all of the people who work there, etc. Podcasts, radio shows, the expense is with the media outlet. So it always surprises me how few nonfiction authors actually utilize media to the extent that they can. It's this fascinating, valuable resource that you have access to. And one of the first challenges comes with what I call, media mindset is what I call it. So the first thing I want you to know as nonfiction authors is that we in media need you. You have something valuable for us. So if I'm a television producer, I have a certain amount of minutes to fill for a television show. Let's say it's a live news show and I have, 30 minutes to fill. I need content. If it's a, magazine article, I have column inches, etc. We have that outreach, we have the audience, but you have the content. So going back to the who, what, when, where, why, if you're able to answer those questions clearly, then you're going to appeal to us so that we can utilize your content and we can share our audience with you. So that's the magic of media. So over the years that I've been teaching this, I've realized that I had kind of a structure that I didn't sort of see at first. And it's kind of ironic because 2021, I chose a word as my word of the year. And the word is impact. And the reason I chose impact is because every author I talk to, and again, I work with nonfiction authors, every author I talk to wants to make an impact of some kind. Absolutely sell more books so that you can reach a bigger audience, so that you can send your kids to college with the money you make. You want to reach out to people so that you can help them, so that you can impact their lives, change their lives, in some cases, save their lives with your content. You're on a mission to make the world better in some way. You've taken an experience, as many nonfiction authors do, maybe a hardship that you've been through, and you got to the other side of it. And then what's remarkable and humbling to me about nonfiction authors is you then take that hardship and that victory that you've achieved, you've gone through it, you've survived it, and you're not like, okay, great, now I'm going to celebrate. You're like, okay, now I'm going to turn around and see who I can help who might be on the same path as me, because I wish I had a resource. And that's what I love about nonfiction authors, because you want to share your life experience, your professional experience, your education. You want to turn around and help other people. And I think that's really powerful. So over the years, as I said, I've kind of come up with this structure, and it's called the Media Impact Framework. And it was ironic to me when I realized that the things I was teaching actually spelled impact. So I'm going to share those with you today. And they are crucial to your journey as an author in media. The first one is identity. The second one is messaging. And I'm going to go through these again. So identity, messaging, pitching, amplification, communication, and transformation. So I'm going to spend this time before we get to the Q&A just briefly going through what each of those are. And so I'm going to start with identity. I talked earlier about mindset. It's very, very crucial that you as a nonfiction author own your expertise and authority. I want you to have that mindset that you have something to offer that can be great in media. Some folks have a message that's suitable for the Today Show. Okay, great. You know, I worked for the Today Show, but as a parenting expert, I didn't get on the Today Show. So that's okay. I did tons of media. So you just want to really think, I've got a message that can help someone out there, and media is going to be one of the ways I get that message out there. Okay. So your identity is very important. And that journalist brain is going to be thinking, well, who is this person? Who is Mary O'Donoghue? Why would I book her to talk about parenting, for example? So as that nonfiction author, you have to have a bio that is very, what is the word I want to say? That brags on you. I'm just going to say that. Your bio should brag on you. I once worked with an incredible author. Oh my gosh, she'd done so much. And when we were talking about her media bio, I noticed that she hadn't shared something really cool that I knew about her, which is that she had won an Emmy for editing out in LA, in Hollywood. And I said, why isn't that in your bio? It's really an important part of your story that you were a movie editor. And she said, well, I didn't want to brag. Your media bio gets to brag on you. One of the coolest things about a media bio is that you're typically not the person saying it. Look how I was introduced. I didn't introduce myself. I was introduced by Alexa. Okay, she is the authority. This is her organization. She introduced me. That then increases my authority because I'm introduced by Alexa Bigler. That is a big deal. So the same thing when you're in a media interview and a journalist or a TV host or a podcaster, a radio host, etc., introduces you. The coolest thing is you actually get to decide what that is. That bio that Alexa read, I wrote, and you get to write your bio too. And that in that way, you get to put the most important things about you into the bio so that not only can it brag on you, but it actually can be a brand ambassador for you. This bio is a powerful thing. So I'm going to challenge you to do a really quick little thing here. And I'm going to ask you to put maybe 2 to 3 words that would describe you. So I could say, for me, #1 best-selling parenting author. #1 best-selling parenting author. Okay, I'll give you 4 words, 4 or 5 words max. So if you want to put in the comments, so I know who I'm talking to, what I would call a mini bio. So I'm going to give you a little challenge. All right, is anybody going to take me up on it? Award-winning writer. Yes, I love that. Broadway actor, singer, life coach, award-winning author. Yes, Jude. Award-winning trauma expert author. Okay, wow. Okay, ooh, look at this. Karen, married mom and reader, award-winning ghostwriter in health communications. Look at this. You already know some crucial things about your media bio. And the neat thing is, look at Suzanne, award-winning author and TEDx speaker. Fantastic. Wow, role model for transgender folks. Melissa, that's awesome. Oh my gosh. Okay. Adventure featured in Forbes and Yahoo Finance for Collect the Cash. Oh my gosh. Okay. Y'all are amazing. So I'm humbled to be in amongst you. But I just want to say the neat thing is you told me who you were. And in your media bio, you need to tell the media who you are. Because when you write a bio, you are initiating a process that says, I know who I am, I know I'm valuable, and I know why I would make a good guest to appear in your media outlet to talk about this particular topic. Okay, so I'm a parenting author and I'm a media coach, right? I have experience in both. So I wouldn't say I'm a tech person. I wouldn't say I know anything about auto mechanics. I wouldn't be the person to talk about those things. Even if I did something to fix my car, I wouldn't be the person to talk about those things. So I have no authority in those things. So when you write a media bio, you claim your authority and you say, I have experience with this. And that is a really important way to convey to the media why they should book you, right? Because we get pitched all the time, we get reached out to all the time, we get stopped in elevators all the time, all of that stuff. So if you actually can convey in your media bio who you are in a very brief way, that is an amazing way to get the media's attention. Okay, and I'm looking at here. Oh my gosh, fantastic. Okay, Kim, you totally cheated. That's more than 5 words. But you're a parenting expert who's been featured on local, national news, and radio. Awesome. Oh my gosh, Karen, Kim, you're amazing. Awesome. Okay, gosh, thank you so much to everybody who shared that. So you can see already that my interest is piqued just reading a few words about you. And so your media bio, remember, is a brand ambassador that can help you get the media's attention. Because we in media are often very overbooked, overwhelmed, and overworked. And so you really have to find a way to cut through the noise and communicate with us. And that's the next step, really, which is messaging. Messaging is so important in media because we need to understand what you're about, right? So the bio answered the question who, but messaging is what. So this is a person who is a parenting expert. What is her thing? Okay, what is the thing that she wants to talk about? We need to understand that. And as I just mentioned, in media, we're so overwhelmed. There's been so many budget cutbacks over the past 10 plus years that somebody who did, like at the Oprah show, I was one of 3 post producers. I worked on Pickler and Ben, which we jokingly called Herpo South, because it was so many Oprah people here in Nashville a couple of years ago. And on that show, I was one senior post producer working with 3 edit teams, just like we had at Herpo, approximately, I think 135, 140-ish shows a year. So at Herpo, I was one of 3 people doing that. And at Pickler and Ben, I was 1 person doing that. And same thing with show producers. So what happens is we're doing more work. We're juggling 3 balls in the air when before we weren't even jugglers. We were just doing a job. So you have to understand the media is very overwhelmed. And so many people don't have clarity about who they are or what their message is. So my message, for example, is I'm a media coach for authors, right? I teach women nonfiction authors how to get publicity without a publicist and how to turn media interviews into valuable marketing assets. So that's my core message. Your core message, it's something that you have to know about yourself as a nonfiction author and guest. It isn't something you always have to include when you pitch the media, and we're going to talk about pitching here in a minute, but it's something you have to know, and it's something that should be in your messaging everywhere we look. Because when you have any sort of outreach to media, or we're looking for somebody, right? Maybe we're looking for a person to talk about grief for children, or we're looking for somebody to talk about money management in a pandemic. And so we're looking for that expert. We're doing research. We're online, right? So we might find you on your social media accounts. We might find an article you were featured in other media. We might find your website when we're doing research. And one of the most important things to media is that we see a consistent message across all of that. Because once we like you, once we go, oh, hey, this person on this website looks like a good person to talk about, personal finance or budgeting in a pandemic, etc. Oh, let me go to her Instagram, or let me go to her Twitter, or whatever it is. And then if we see a different message or there's inconsistencies there, we're gone. We're gone, because we need reassurance that we're booking the right person. So your messaging is very, very important. So if you have clarity on your messaging, that is literally your number one asset as a person who wants media. And that might surprise you, because most people think knowing someone on the inside, sort of having that connection, is your number one asset. And forgive me if I've told this story before to you, Alexa, but I'll share a little story here. When I was working for the Oprah show, my parenting book reached number one in parenting. A media interview I had done a couple months before actually went live, and my book, right up the Amazon charts from about, I don't know, 650,000 or something to 97 overall, into number one in parenting. So I was like, what in the world is happening? A friend of mine at Harpo, I was still in the edit room, printed up, hey, this just happened to Mary, so printed up showing I was number one in parenting. The lovely graphics department people printed that up for me. I'm walking out of the building with him, longtime friend. He's like, Mary, let's go out for a drink. I'm like, no, I just want to go home to my husband and kids. Like, I don't know what's happening. I guess I'm a best-selling author. And we ran into Oprah as we were leaving, and she said, what are you two up to? And Mike said, my friend said, we're celebrating. And Oprah said, what are you celebrating? And I said, I wrote a parenting book and it just went to number one. And I'm holding this paper, which I handed to Oprah. And she looks at it and she's like, oh my God, Mary, how did this happen? And she hands me back. She's actually holding my hand the whole time, because that's just how Oprah is. And she asked me what my book is about. And I said, it's a, what did I say? I think I was a little excited, not about seeing Oprah, I saw her all the time, but about being a number one best-selling author. And I think I said something like, it's a month-by-month guide for busy 21st century parents to raise kids with extraordinary character. Okay, so I had clarity on the messaging of my book, and I was able to share it with Oprah. Cool, right? Oprah knew me by name. She's holding my hand. I'm literally telling her one-on-one about my book. Did she book me on the Oprah show? Did I get on season 25? No, I did not. I mean, what better contact is there than telling Oprah about your book while she holds your hand? And she knows you. She knew my name. She knew me for years. I was not I had clarity. So that's something. The second thing you have to have is you have to be a good match with that media outlet. So my clarity was there, perfect, but I wasn't a good match with the media outlet. So it was absolutely no surprise to me that I didn't get booked on the Oprah show. I didn't expect to. But those two things are far, far more important than having a contact on the inside. So I meet authors all the time who tell me, oh, I don't know if I'll ever get into media. I don't really know anyone. I don't have a publicist who knows anyone. Media interview is not a favor. That's not how you get a media interview. So having clarity about your messaging and really making sure that your messaging and who you are matches up properly with that media outlet. In other words, your audience would consume that media. That's what really matters. So if anyone wants to share anything about their messaging, I would love to see it. So if you want to share that, and I'm going to get ready to go on to the next one because I know I'm a talker and I want to make sure I leave time, Alexa, for Q&A. So if you want to share your messaging, you're more than welcome. And the next part of the media impact framework is pitching. Pitching is when you reach out to media folks. Because you will know about, it's important to have your media bio in there, and it's important to have clarity about your messaging. That really will help. The pitch is really just a way to reach out to the correct media outlet who already serves your audience. And it can be done quite simply. It can be done with getting the information about who to pitch, which people get super intimidated about this. And it really isn't very hard. One of the things I would love y'all to do today is to think about somebody who's already in your general field And if they are out there, let's say, if I use parenting myself as an example. So if I'm a new author and I want to promote my book and I want to share my message about parenting, I would look for other folks in the parenting space who are out there, not talking about, diapers and newborns and things like that, and not talking about teenage stuff, but talking about sort of 6 to 12-year-old parenting, 6 to 12-year-olds, because that was my space. So who are the folks out there already in your space who are ahead of you? They're out there getting the media. You see them being interviewed. You've heard them on podcasts, and you think positively about them. Follow those people on social media. See what media interviews they do, because those folks will promote them. They will share that. So if you can follow them and you see what media they're doing, then follow and interact with the media folks who are already interested in your topic. Okay, create a database of those people. It does take some time, but it's not very hard, really isn't. And you can also really find out how easy it is to reach folks, because, for example, print journalists, online journalists will just share their email right in they'll say this article is by Susan Jones, and you click on it and it'll be, Susan Jones's email. You can reach out to people on Twitter in their DMs, or you can even reach out to people on Instagram and say, hey, I have a great idea for a story for you. I've been following you for months. I think this would be ideal for your audience. May I pitch you here, or is there a contact information I can get? It's really not that hard. So that is the next part. And I'm just going to look at a couple of these. Oh, these are great. Help people navigate change through play and fun. Oh my gosh, Kate, I need play and fun. I need to learn more about what you do. This is wonderful. Okay, so moving on. So we've done identity, messaging. We've talked a little bit about pitching. The next thing is what I call amplification. Amplification is strategy. Okay, that's when you really want to amplify your message. But there is no point in amplifying your message if you're not reaching the right audience. Okay, so if I have a parenting message and I go on a podcast that's for, I don't know, dating podcast or a finance podcast, I don't have that expertise to bring. That is not going to amplify my message. It's going to be random. And too many authors settle for random media. And they also take media interviews because somebody reaches out and says, hey, would you be on my podcast, or would you do this? If it's not your audience, say no. You really have to think in terms of strategy that makes sense and helps you reach your audience. One of the things I learned working for the Oprah Show for 12 years was the importance of intention. Oprah always talked about that she had done a show where she kind of gave voice to people who had a lot of hate and negativity. And after that experience, she said, I never want to give voice to that sort of thing again. I always want to know the intention. So literally every time a producer pitched an idea to Oprah, from that moment on, they had to say, my intention for this show is this. And if that intention worked, they did the show. So you really need to think in terms of what your intention is. Thanks, Kate. And I'm watching the clock too, because I know I'm going a little bit over, so I'm going to kind of go through quickly. So amplification is strategy. Always be intentional about your media interview. Never accept what I call random acts of media. Let it be something that makes sense. So if you can say, this is where my audience is, this is consistent with my messaging, this is consistent with who I am, with my media bio, okay, I will do this interview, okay? The next thing that I talk about is communication. Now, this is the least sexy of all the steps. Communication sounds so boring, but communication is everything. In a media interview, if you don't know how to communicate your story, for example, it's very hard for us to build a connection with you. It's very hard for us to know, like, and trust you. And marketers tell us that those are the most important things. We learn to know you through your story. We relate to you through your story. We find commonalities through your story. We once had, I won't share what show this is, but I once had to work on editing I think it was around 25-minute interview that was supposed to be about 15 minutes. We had to edit more than 10 minutes out. And on paper, the nonfiction author's book was one of the most fascinating premises I've ever heard of. I mean, this person had lived an adventurous life and done all these incredible things. It was like a movie, but he couldn't tell his own story to save his life. So his story was here, and then it went back to when he was in kindergarten, and then all of a sudden he was in some foreign country years later, and then he was back, and then he was here. And then my team in post-production had to try to make sense of this man's story so that people would be interested in him and, hopefully buy his book and learn more about him, etc. He was his own worst enemy because he couldn't tell his story. The structure that I teach my students and clients is a proprietary structure that I came up with called Relatable to Remarkable. So there should be something in your story that is relatable. And that too, that little TO, is when you experience this thing and then you had your epiphany, or you had your change of heart, or you had your realization that something needed to change moving forward. And the remarkable is when you actually made that change. So think in terms of sharing a story like that. The other important thing is sound bites. Sound bites are very important because we remember sound bites. So earlier I said a media interview is a marketing asset that somebody else pays to create. That's a sound bite. It has a lot of meaning with very few words, and it takes less than 10 seconds to say. I'm going to move on to the next thing, which is the last part of this framework, and that is transformation. So way back in the beginning, when you're thinking about who you are and who you work with, who benefits from your message, I want you also to think about, what do you want the transformation to be if 6 months from now you've done the media interviews that you wanted to do? You take where you are in this moment, maybe you've never done media interviews, and go all the way, sorry, my dogs are behind me, all the way to 6 months from now or a year from now, and say, what do I want to have been transformed in myself as a professional, as a person maybe who's never done media? I was, Mary, myself, personally terrified of doing media interviews. And when I worked at the Oprah show, my editor turned to me, she said, why would you be scared of doing media interviews? Your work is seen by sometimes 20 million people. And I said, 20 million people aren't looking at me. That scared the heck out of me. But I did it, and I just kept going, and now I'm totally comfortable doing media. So that was a transformation for me. But also, what transformation do you want for your audience? So when someone sees a 5-minute interview with you on the news, when they listen to a 20-minute episode of a podcast, what transformation do you want in your audience? Because that's your North Star. That transformation that you want to have is your North Star. That is what you're going for. That is how you make an impact, is through the transformation. So for me, as a parenting author, I wanted to help parents teach their children in a very real, concrete way what gratitude was, compassion, integrity, all of these, difficult to understand, sort of complex concepts that are sort of ethereal. I wanted them to become real. And that was sort of my transformation. And because I heard from parents who shared those things with me, I knew that I was able to achieve that. So if you are able to achieve your transformation, that's how you make the biggest impact. I'm going to wrap up now because I know I've gone over, and I want to make sure that I have time for questions. How am I doing, Alexa?
This is all such great information. I don't think anybody is concerned at all that you're about that you're taking more time. We're all furiously taking notes.
Okay. When I was in third grade, I had to write, I will not talk in the hallway 100 times.
I had to do that too, more than once, I'm afraid.
Talker, I can talk all day. You see, I don't have any notes. This is just, it's who I am. And this is the other thing I want to share with you. So many authors tell me they're nervous when they do media interviews, just like I was. I always tell them, this stuff you're passionate about. This is part of you. It is not separate from you. And you can do this because it's part of you. You're going to be just fine. So, all right. Oh gosh. All right. So who has questions?
So before we get into the questions, I want to just say I'm a little rusty on my Zoom game apparently, and I sent out a link to several of the women in our coaching program, and I didn't realize it was my personalized link. So that's why there are so many Alexa Big Wharfs.
I was
And
gonna say,
so I'm like, who are all these
that's a
people
lot.
posting as me? But yes, we do have questions, and make sure you put your question in the Q&A box. And if you are logged in as Alexa Big Wharf, would you please put your
Okay.
name in parentheses in your question so that we know who we're talking to? But I'm just going to go ahead and read these out to you, and
Yeah.
we'll go through it. Okay, so the first one is from Wendy, and she wants to know, she has an author who thinks his book on artificial intelligence would thrill Oprah's Meg. I am a former journalist and no health marketing consultant ghostwriter, so I know that's not his audience. Maybe Smithsonian, for example. How do you change an author's mind politely?
What a good question.
It's a good question.
That is brilliant. Yeah. People, here's what I say, because I get people all the time who say, I want to be on Oprah, I want to be on the Ellen show, I want to be, my number one response is, where is your audience? Because showing up at a party where the person you want to meet is not there, the person that you are hoping to meet and help is not there, is not going to be fun. And it's not going to get you what you want. So if they want to make the biggest impact, they should reach their audience. And if their audience doesn't sound like would be watching Super Soul Sunday, which is one of the primary things Oprah still does, then that's not going to work. It's not going to work. So I would just say, where's your audience? Because it doesn't serve your audience if you are doing this because you basically want to meet Oprah. And this really goes to a why question, which is, why do you want media? Why do you want to be on the Oprah show? So that's kind of what I would say. Why do you want to do this? Because your audience isn't there. You got to serve your audience. That's why we're in this. Because it's too many people at the beginning, just they kind of want to meet Oprah or they want to meet Ellen or whoever. But that's what I would ask.
You know what, before we go to the next question, I want to make sure, because sometimes people drop off in the Q&A session, and I know that you and I had spoken that you're doing a podcast pitching special course. Can we talk about that really quickly so that everybody hears about it?
Yes, and I will. Okay.
I have the link for it. I think
you have the link. If not, I will get you the link.
Yep, we've got the link.
It's How to Pitch Podcasts. It is the 1st of September, which is tomorrow if you're watching this live. It is at 11 a.m. Central, 12 p.m., 12 noon Eastern, and it's $47. And it's going to be a 3-hour workshop, and I will teach more in depth on identity, messaging, and pitching. Because those 2 steps really need to come before pitching. But we are going to talk specifically about how to pitch podcasts because they really, in many ways, are very accessible. And I find that many of the authors I work with who have not done media before feel that podcasting is a comfort level that they have because they may not be on camera and they're not in a television studio with lights and people walking around, etc. So yes, that is How to Pitch Podcasts. And yeah, if you have the link, oh, look at you.
I dropped it in there.
Girl.
And we'll send it out I know a couple of people are calling in on the phone, so it will be in the replay email so you can grab that. And I dropped it on the Facebook.
I'd love to go into depth with this more with you tomorrow. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So would you recommend writing your bio? Nina wants to know before your book is finished.
Sure. In media, I'll tell you, we are much more interested in you than your book. We're interested in your nonfiction book because you are telling us by having a nonfiction book that you have expertise. So we are really focused on how your expertise can serve our audience. Can you educate, inform, entertain, or inspire them? I actually call this the EI. It's the old McDonald media theory because it's EI, and then O is offer. And that offer is you have, oh, and Alexa, so you've got a book, and where can we get your book? Oh, you can get my book here, Amazon, or here at these independent bookstores, or etc. On my website, whatever it is. So EIEIO, entertain, I'll probably say these in different order, but it's basically entertain, inform, educate, inspire, and offer. So any four of those things, if you can do that and you have an offer, that's really essentially what a media interview is. So you know enough about yourself to share that bio before the book comes out, and then keep that bio across all of your social media. Anything where you say who you are, be consistent with that, because it's important to us.
Perfect. We have a question from our Facebook audience. This is from Angie. She says, I've received letters back from companies that say no soliciting. Should I keep sending pitches?
I'm not sure. So are they media outlets? With media outlets, we want to be pitched.
Yeah.
But if
I don't know. She didn't.
Yeah.
Angie, if you're still listening live, can you provide some clarification to what type of companies and what you're pitching? And then we can come back to that question.
Yeah, because if they're saying they don't want to get that information, then I wouldn't send it. But for media outlets, typically, we do want to be pitched, because we have the challenge of filling those column inches or filling time every single day.
Yeah.
So we want to be pitched.
I would, yeah, okay. If she writes back, we will get back into that question in a minute. Another great question from Facebook from Sheila. Should we set up media kit pages on our website?
Yes, you should have. I always tell my students and clients that they need to have a media page, and this should have your photo, high quality headshot. It should have a JPEG of your book cover, your media bio, and on that page, then if you have appeared in other media, it should be links, active links to those media appearances. That's very important, because we may want to go and see, hey, she did this interview, I want to check that out. Is she comfortable on camera? It looks like she did a local news interview. I want to see that. So we may not watch the whole 5-7 minute interview, but we'll watch a couple minutes and see how you do. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Nina says, this is a great question. When you're talking about messaging, are you talking about your elevator pitch?
Yeah, I guess so. That's another way to look at it. Yeah. It always surprises me that I had to give mine to Oprah. Good Lord. By the way, I did turn to my friend Mike and say, I'm going to need that drink now after that, just because. and then we went to a place and I had a sip of a Bailey's Irish cream. You could tell I'm not a drinker. And I was like, I can't drink anything. I'm driving. But I got home and my kids had balloons and it was fun. So yeah, that was funny. And can I answer Kimberly's question? Is that okay? Can I go rogue? Because I
Go for it. Go for it.
So Kimberly, I love your question. Kimberly Todd, what if you have only written one book? Should you wait to do any kind of media other than social or blogging until you are more fancy? That's one of my favorite questions. Okay, Kimberly, you do not have to wait to be fancy, because we're really just looking for ways we can serve our audience, right? So if you can entertain in a media interview, if you can inform, educate us. So inform is telling us a new study came out on X, Y, or Z. Educate is, here's how you paint your bedroom using the special new painting technique, right? Or it's a how-to kind of thing. Or inspire. Does your story, does your book inspire someone to try harder, to overcome an obstacle, etc.? If that's happening, you don't have to wait till you have more books. Again, we like that you're a nonfiction author. That makes you highly bookable, right? Because we're so busy and we don't have time to process all the various things you've done, there's some like little box in our brain that we can click off when it says, oh yeah, check. She's a best-selling author. She's an award-winning author. She is an author of, she's a multi-published author, etc. All of that is good information for us. But what we're really looking for is, what can you pull out of your book to share with our audience to do one of those educate, inform, entertain, or inspire things? Because that's really the type of content most media is looking for. So you can be fancy right off the get-go. I love it.
That's wonderful. Let's all be fancy.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. So we covered that one. Okay, what do you are you familiar with Love What Matters? I'm not familiar with this. Other groups that want to keep your story, how does that impact talking to other media? So I think if you understand the question, I don't need to explain it to you.
It sounds like somebody wants to own your words then.
That's
Is
what I was
that
gleaning.
like, I'm gonna try to figure that out. Oh, okay, I'm looking up there. Yeah, okay. If you share something with a media outlet that they're going to publish and they want the exclusive rights to publish that content, my understanding makes sense to me that they would not own your story, but that they are essentially perhaps purchasing or saying, if we distribute this, we then own these words in this order in this exact way.
Right.
So I believe that's the case. I could be wrong, but that would be my understanding. So you can't then take that exact thing and share it with somebody else, but you can take your concept and share it with somebody else. That would be my belief, but I would check with a particular website outlet just to get clarity on that.
Yeah, just my experience with freelance writing, if that's what she's talking about, creating a blog post or something, is exactly that you can't take that same exact blog post and submit it to other places, but your knowledge is your knowledge and your story is your story. So
And that's fair, right? So if they're giving you that distribution, they're trading it for that content. But if you then put that content on other places, it makes it less valuable that they have it. So it seems fair that that's what they would do.
Mhm. Oh, so many good questions. Okay. As a nonfiction author who already released the book, is there a time frame for asking for media?
Not really. No. I always say your book is not egg salad. It doesn't go stale. Basically, to us, again, since we're not focused on your book, that is a wonderful thing, because that means if you're past your 3-month launch that the publishing world likes to see a launch happen in, we don't care, because we're not really that concerned about it, because we're not like, how can we promote Mary's book today on our show? That's not the way we think. We think, how can Mary help our audience, right? So, oh, she's got a book she's the author of. Let me tell you something. My parenting book, it's called When You Say Thank You Me, right? So it's all about teaching kids values. One of them is gratitude. That book came out in October of 2010. If I was still talking about parenting, or recently again had started talking about parenting, had a parenting website, had parenting content, social media, etc., I could be pitching myself to do parenting right now, even though my book came out in 2010, because it's not relevant. Because it's not relevant that my book is 10 years, 11 years old. What is relevant is, am I still a parenting expert? Am I still talking about that? Can they verify that by going online? Can I bring them some parenting audience that I already have? Is my content still true and relevant? If your content is still true and relevant, sure. If you wrote a book about, I don't know, Facebook, how to do Facebook ads, by the time it came out, it's probably not relevant because they change it so fast with all the algorithms. But my parenting book doesn't have anything that's out of date, other than the fact that my kids, who were, 8 or whatever, they were 8 and what were they, 10 and I don't even know. My kids are 19 and 24 now. So I guess they were 8 and I don't know, they were kids, they were children. How did they grow up so fast? Okay. But yeah, so my point is, it doesn't go stale. If your content is still true and relevant, you go for it.
Awesome. And there's so many times that you can take old themes and make them relevant to whatever's happening. Nancy just said there might be current events that make your book timely. And that's so true. I mean, shoot, if you wrote a book about fashion in the 90s, it's all back again now. As a silly example.
Yes.
Okay. I love Kate's question too, because I think this is something that a lot of people want to know about is once you've done, say you've gone out there, you've done this media, she's amassed a bunch of media, but she doesn't know what to do next. And more specifically, do you help people figure out what those next steps are and work with them?
Can you totally repeat that? Because I was reading Nancy's.
Oh, she says, Kate's amassed a bunch of media, but she doesn't know what to do next. So do you work with people on this specific
Oh my
aspect?
heavens, yes. This is one of the first things I said was how I talk about like how to get media, right? How to be prepared for media and how to build long-term media relationships. So, and I'll share how important that is. Recently, I shared with my community that I've got this workshop coming up. So all these past students were like, hey, is this something new? Is this something we need to pay attention to? I was like, y'all know this, okay? And I was so touched that previous people were like, wait, do you have something new, Mary? I'm in, what is it? I'm like, y'all don't need this. Y'all go back to your notes, you have this. But I was so touched because when you're a known entity, people feel that they know you, they know that you provide the services that you say you're going to provide, so they trust you. Same thing with media. When you do a good media interview, I'm going to tell you a little secret about what happens in the control room. We're all in there going, oh my God, she's fantastic. I'm going to get her book. Do you have her book? Did you? Oh, okay. Wait, I'm going online. I'm buying her book. You're doing an interview, right? You walk out of that television studio and you're walking away, and the executive producer turns to the show producer and says, book her again. She was great. Mm-hmm. You're a known entity. We want to bring you back. So did that answer the question? We get distracted.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely a part of it. But I think like, say Kate's been interviewed on, 3 different local media channels. I think this is where Kate's going with her question. Right, then what do you do with that information afterwards? How do you continue to use it?
Yes. Okay. I totally get it now. I understand now. You have to build relationships. Okay. So when you do a media interview on a media outlet, you then need to promote it. You need to follow up with that same producer, same columnist, content creator, whoever it is, and say, hey, I really enjoyed doing the interview with you about this. I would love to come on the show again and talk to you about something different. And so take those people, because you're a known entity, and then keep them in like a special file where you go back. And because you promote them and they know you're promoting them, tag them, right? So, hey, I did this fantastic interview with this, local news station or whatever it is, and then tag them and say, this was great, and promote it. Make sure that you reach out and you thank them for it and build that relationship. So let's say you don't hear back from them the first time, okay? They're busy. A month later, send them something else. Hey, I just saw this news story on your station about this. I could bring a fresh perspective with this information. So build those relationships. Sometimes people won't get back to you right away, but definitely do that. The reason that, Kate, I'm guessing, it is that you did more, like I talked about earlier, the random acts of media rather than strategy to really know how to follow up with these people and build ongoing media relationships. The other thing that's so important, if you come out of a media interview and you're like, okay, well, I don't know what that really did for me. I'm doing these media interviews, is the content of the media interview is very, very important. You have to know how to communicate effectively in that interview, and you have to know your intention. So if you go on a media interview and say, I really want people to buy my book because of this interview, or I really want people to take this fun quiz on my website because of that interview, you have to make sure you have that call to action very clearly at the end of the interview. And you have to make sure that the content you provide during the actual body of the interview is compelling enough that people do want to take that call to action. They want to buy your book, Kate. They want to go to your website and take that quiz. They want to know more about you. They want to follow you on social media because you really entertained them. You really were interesting. So the content of the interview is sometimes the reason why you don't get the results you want. So absolutely, I do work with that.
Great answer. Okay, so and then how do you take these local media interviews and transition it into larger media outlets? Kim wants to know.
Great question. One tip is to, depending on what market you're in, look up, let's say it's ABC. look up ABC O, the letter O, and O's. So O and O's are owned and operated stations.
Mm.
Many years ago, I worked for an NBC owned and operated station in Washington, D.C. We share content. So that information, that content is shared with NBC in New York, etc. But also, if you're own, let's say you really love your content to get on Good Morning America or ABC News. Look for the ABC affiliate, even if it's not an owned and operated station, in your market, and actually pitch them. Do a great interview with them. If your interview in any way ties into something that's happening in local or regional or national news, sometimes that can actually get sent to the network. We would have feeds, video feeds at the end of the evening where we would send stories. When I worked for an NBC affiliate, we would send stories to the network so that they could get information. So your little segment that you do on your local station in Peoria, Illinois was where I was, can sometimes get sent directly to the networks.
Wow.
And so that people don't realize that, but that's another way for that network to support each other, right? So if there's an amazing story, an amazing guest who's on this, news in Sacramento at NBC, then the network may be interested in that, and that's somehow how they find you.
We are at the top of the hour. Do you have a couple minutes to answer a couple more questions, or are you needing to get going?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so I think this is an interesting question from Susan, especially since you work primarily with women. She's saying that in her field, the majority of the experts are men and they don't always pass the baton on. So she's asking, as a woman, how does she get that media as an expert, credible expert in her field?
So I can tell you that I'll use the example of talk shows because I worked on a lot of national talk shows. We like our guests to be varied and to show diversity. We don't want the same type of, expert on all the time. So if you're in a field that is very male dominant, then from a media point of view, you would actually appeal to us more because you'd be set apart because you're a woman. So that can actually be in your favor. You don't have to get past your peers as gatekeepers. The media is the gatekeeper, right? You have to get past a producer or a columnist or somebody who's creating content. So a lot of us, there are a lot of women now in media, much more so than ever before. The last show that I worked on, I took a picture once in the control room. There were more women in the control room behind the scenes than there were men. There were, I think, 3 men and 6 or 7 women. So we far outnumbered them. That's never happened to me in my entire career. So women are more and more the gatekeepers. Mm-hmm. So I would look for women to pitch, columnists that you read. Maybe there's a magazine where people with, I don't know what your expertise is, but where people with your expertise are featured. I would look for women who are writing those articles. If there are not women who are writing those articles, I would look for articles that have been written that have featured a woman. Anything where you can see, hey, here's a way I can break in. Your perspective, your point of view matters. And in media, we want that. We want a fresh perspective. Stale is the worst thing that we can get in media. We don't want that same expert over and over again. So if you can stand out, that is an asset. So don't worry about the people in your field who are male dominated, but let them go. You can stand out from the crowd.
I love that answer. Oh my goodness. Now I'm going to combine a couple of questions here because I've seen a variety of kind of the same type of thing. And that is, what to do in terms of what do you need in terms of permissions for sharing clips from an interview or pictures of you and the host. Can you put things on your website like as seen on, ABC, whatever, without permission, and use those clips and all those kinds of things?
Okay. So typically I tell people check with the media outlet. So if a producer books you on a television show, check with the producer, hey, I would love to promote this wonderful interview I did with your host. You are promoting them. I can tell you, we want that. Typically, we want that. So I would check with them and say, love to promote it. May I get a clip? If they don't give you a clip, but they're fine with you promoting it, there are many, many clip services around the country. I wish I could think of one. It's in Chicago and I can't think of the name of it, but there are lots of, just look, search for clip services, and you tell them the date of the interview. If it's within the first 30 days after the appearance, they can usually get that interview for you for a reasonable fee. And then it tends to be more expensive if, hey, this was a year ago, I was on this sort of thing. But you can typically find it that way. We generally want you to do it, so much so that one of my jobs at the last show where I was senior post producer was to look at an interview and find a clip that we could provide to the author so that the author could share it with their local television station. So, hey, local author Alexa Bigworth was on this show in Chicago, or whatever it is, this national show, and here's her local market. And you can tune in. That's like a little human interest story. So we would actually do that for every single interview. But
Wow.
I would share one little tip. The only ones we wouldn't do is I would go to their social media for every single author and see if they were active. If they were not active on their social media, I would not take the time to do that, because we wanted them to share it on social media and we wanted to share it with their local media. But if they had not been on their social media page in 2 months, I wouldn't do it, because I was crazy busy and I knew it would be like wasted. I knew they were going to do nothing with it. So
that's super interesting, and in itself just answers the question of whether or not you should be making an effort on your social media.
They kind of go together. So yeah, so typically we want you to do it and just ask, but we want you to promote us. We want cross promotion. So,
and clips and stuff aside, it's always okay to say I was featured in an interview
100%.
on whatever.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And if the host allowed you to take a picture with them, you can assume that they're okay with you sharing it. Okay, good. Okay, so let's see here. Angie did come back from us, and she said that she was actually pitching the Jay Leno show, and the letter was returned to me stamped no soliciting.
Well, the Jay Leno show was celebrity based, so I would imagine, unless you had a really, really, really compelling story, that they would not have been interested. But yeah, so then if somebody says no soliciting, I wouldn't reach out.
Okay, perfect. Okay, let's see here. So Linda says she's been on 3 wellness interviews on the Top Doc Media for commercials. She's had some podcast radio interviews. Should she package these together to send out to other media outlets to show that she's been on other places?
Yeah, you can. It's a great thing to put on your media page. You can even, some authors will, if they've done a lot of media, will put it right on their homepage. But it should definitely at least live on your media page. We call that in media a sizzle reel.
A sizzle reel. I love that. A sizzle reel.
Yeah. Sizzle reel. So that's when we put together our best moments from our show and kind of put it out there to people who we want to, sponsor or whatever. So that's what I think of it. I think of it as a sizzle reel. But yeah, it's your media reel. One thing I would advise you, if you do it, don't just include your part of the conversation. So I've seen authors who've just put their answers. I want to see the questions. So if somebody asks you a question, include the question and the answer. So we really get an idea of what that interaction was like. And if you're being interviewed and there's more than one person and somebody, offers a little bit, it's okay to, if that's very brief, to keep that in from that other person. But if they go on and on, obviously you just want to have your own clip. But yeah, and put that on, share it on social media. Oh my gosh, I was on this show today. This was incredible. What a great question from the host. What a joy to be interviewed by her. And here's my answer. And if you're not watching this show, be sure to just give back and share and thank them, and absolutely use those, put it together in a sizzle, and be proud of the media that you're doing. It will give us confidence to book you further.
Great. I'm going to wrap this up just with a combination of these two last questions quickly. And I know this would take a lot to go in depth on, but we've gotten a couple questions from different, we have a lot of memoirists in our community. We have a lot of grief writers in our community, and they're kind of asking, what are the things, would the media be interested in them? What would a memoirist come forward with other than that's different from a nonfiction writer? If you have a general answer for that, and then we will wrap this up for today.
100%. Okay, so I work with authors who write in the memoir space. If there is something in their memoir that there can be takeaways for the reader. And when you are a memoir writer and you pitch yourself to media, just make sure that the focus isn't exclusively on you, okay? That your story is to help other people, that you wrote it so that other people can benefit from your experience. And here's how. Because remember, in media, the reason we are not worried about when your book came out is because our focus is really not on you. It's really on our audience. Media across all the landscape is business. And many times media outlets are owned by corporations, etc. We have to turn a profit, right? We have to stay in business. We have to stay on the air. We have to keep circulating a magazine, etc. So we need to serve our audience. So if you, as a memoirist, have content, remember, that can educate, inform, entertain, or inspire, that's relevant to us. And yes, your story is about you. I talked about relatable to remarkable. We want to know your story. But then how can we take your story and apply it to our readers, listeners, and viewers? So if you can do that, then absolutely you can do media. Did I answer the first part of the question?
You answered that perfectly. And then the next one was about grief, which I could think of a whole lot of reasons why.
Yeah, 100%. Sadly, a lot of people need to know how to deal with grief now. In this pandemic. And of course, it's an ongoing subject all the time. If you have a perspective that can help people deal with that, then 100% pitch media. There is a great deal of need now. So if you can help meet that need, then you should absolutely be pitching media for sure.
Yes. Okay, wonderful. And I mean, there's two questions left. Should we, do you want to handle them? Okay. I just didn't want to really overstep your time there. So, okay. So, well, good. It's posted by me. So I'm not quite sure who this is coming from, but it is not me. This person has a lot of media coverage, Dateline, Inside Edition, Anderson Cooper, big names. She hasn't solicited any of it. I'm assuming it's a she. How do I keep it coming?
Okay, so you have been on the receiving end of media inquiries, right? So people have reached out to you in media. That means that somewhere you are putting out compelling content, either with your book, which has perhaps a big audience, in social media, or on a website, right? In some way you are known for this topic. So this has been at this point a passive process where they're coming to you, okay? And that's great, that's wonderful. But you are in charge of your media journey. So you already have this great information that the media is interested in you. If you look at your media interviews, do they, as I said, entertain, inform, educate, or inspire? Do you compel people to, this is where you can find your book, this is your website, etc. Do they take action at the end of these media interviews that you've seen actual results from? If so, great. If not, get some media coaching, training, get some work, because the media is interested in you. And this should be giving you some sort of result. I always encourage authors to be active, okay? Not passive in terms of your media. So you should 100% now be pitching based on the fact that you know the media is interested in what your topic is. I would love to know more. You can reach out to me if you want to. Should I put my email address in there, or you've shared it?
Yeah, I'll drop your email address in there, because we're getting some more specific, like really, really specific questions. So I would love for people to reach
Yeah.
out to you.
Yeah.
If you're okay with that, I'm assuming
Sure.
you are, since you just said drop your email address.
Yeah,
So.
sure. It may
And for
take
the,
this thing tomorrow, so maybe after that, if you attend that, I may be able to answer your question on the How to Pitch Podcast workshop tomorrow. That's a 3-hour workshop, so I'll have a lot more time to answer questions. But okay, great, yes.
and that is recorded for people who can't attend live or be there the whole time, or how are you, or is it live only?
It is live. It is recorded, and I think my team's going to have it up for about a week for anybody who, to get time to watch it.
Okay.
So yeah, it is both. But I'm only going to teach it once.
Right.
My team really wanted me to do it, and I said, okay, but I want to make sure people can do great interviews and have the knowledge of how to do interviews. So for me to teach people just to pitch is a little bit hard, because I want them to do great interviews too, because your media interviews are permanent. So I'm going to teach it, and I'm going to hope they use the power for good and not evil.
Absolutely. I like this last question, because we do have a lot of fiction authors in our community, and we know that your expertise is nonfiction, but what I see a lot of fiction authors doing, as in this case, is they're taking really relevant real world topics and writing fiction around them. So, how do you take your topics and themes from your fiction and pitch them like you would a nonfiction topic?
That's a great question. And I worked with an author, somebody I've known for decades, who had that kind of situation with a book that had a topic about race. And he has gotten tons of media because his topic is so very relevant. His messaging in his novel that his character goes through, that story is very relevant and super relatable for the current audience, right? So if you have content as a novelist that does apply to anything that's relevant in our culture now, you can 100% pitch in that way. Because I want you to think about this. That's actually more powerful than pitching yourself as a novelist, because when you see a novelist being interviewed in media, it tends to be a very famous, very successful novelist who has achieved a celebrity status, okay? Or is the latest new thing, or has written a super controversial novel, or that's getting a lot of attention, or something like that, right? But every single day, in every media outlet, pretty much around the country and the world, nonfiction authors are interviewed all of the time. The door is open to you for media if you're a nonfiction author with a message to share. You, as a novelist, also have a message to share. So you can get in that same door that is open to nonfiction authors if you pitch it in that way, right? So you're not saying, hey, buy my book. You're saying, as the author of a novel about this topic, I drew on my own personal experience with XYZ. I researched the topic of XYZ. And what I have learned is this. I would love to share with your audience because it's so relevant to this particular topic.
I love that. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
We've reached the end of the questions. Yay. Thank you so much for spending extra time with us. And thank you for everyone who stuck around for all of that. This is such a wonderful thing. I plan on being in grabbing your podcast course, because this year and next year, I'm focused on getting myself out. I've been promoting a lot of other people. Now I want to get, yay. So I'm super excited about about making sure that I still have the most up-to-date tools for what, it's always good to get more education. So I'm excited.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I look forward to that tomorrow. And I'm really honored to be here with your wonderful audience. Thank you so much, Alexa. This has been so much fun.
Oh, we appreciate you so much. Thank you, everyone. And the replay will be out within as fast as we can get it out. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.